Okay, so maybe you're picking up on this whole film photography thing that's back in style. It's kind of cool, right? We're going to check out some awesome classic cameras today. Perfect if you just found out about film, or maybe you used to do it way back when and you're curious again. So what's the deal with this whole analog comeback anyway?
It's pretty interesting, actually. Like, we're living in this digital world, right? Everything's instant. So there's something kind of nice about slowing down, going back to film. It's about, well, the experience, touching the camera, getting your hands on the film, waiting for your pictures. And the grain, too, gives the photos a look you don't get with digital. It's less about, like, perfectly capturing everything and more about the art of how you got there.
Yeah, yeah. Like writing someone an actual letter instead of texting.
Yeah.
Both get the message across, but there's something kind of special about the handwritten one, don't you think? Okay, but before we totally geek out on these old school cameras, what should someone even be thinking about when they're trying to pick one out?
It's a little like, I don't know, choosing a magic wand or something. Finding the right one for you. But really, it's about how comfortable you are with this stuff. Are you like someone who wants to learn everything, all the manual controls? Or do you want something that's easier, more automatic? And, of course, how much do you want to spend? Budget matters. Oh, and what kind of pictures do you like taking? Street scenes, big landscapes, portraits, all those cameras we're going to talk about, they each have their thing, their strength.
It's got to fit your style, right? Like a partner in crime for your creative stuff. This article, Journey Back to Film, it starts with the SLRs, the single lens reflex cameras.
Yeah.
The classic camera look. First up, they talk about the Nikon F3. They call it a workhorse.
And they're not kidding. The Nikon F3, it was the camera for pros for years, even after it first came out, way back in 1980. It's seriously tough. That's part of what people love. But it's also smart, good mechanics, but it has some automatic stuff too, like aperture priority mode. You get to choose how much control you want. So you pick the aperture that's like how big the lens opens to let in light, and the camera, it figures out the shutter speed so your photo isn't too bright or dark. It's really cool for starting to play with manual settings without getting in over your head.
I can totally picture a photojournalist with this camera, the Nikon F3,
Yeah.
out there in the thick of it, getting the shot no matter what. But let's say someone's never used an SLR and wants something a little less, I don't know, intense, maybe cheaper too. What would you tell them?
The Canon AE-1, great camera to start with. When it came out in '76, it was huge. One of the first cameras that had a tiny computer brain and microprocessor. That's what let them do the automatic and semi-automatic modes super user-friendly. Kind of like, building a fire from scratch versus using a lighter. Both work, but one is definitely easier to figure out, right? The Canon AE-1, it makes photography less intimidating, and it's still so fun to use.
I love that analogy. And yeah, you said it easier on the wallet, always a plus. But what about someone who wants to learn absolutely everything about photography, the real nitty-gritty, even if it means no automatic help?
Okay, so for someone like that wants to be a purist, the Pentax K1000, that's their camera. It's all about keeping it simple. You do everything by hand, no fancy electronics, no auto exposure. You're calling all the shots. Might sound kind of scary, but it feels amazing when you get it right. You load the film, you set the aperture, you pick the shutter speed, it's all you. That camera becomes like an extension of how you see the world.
Photography boot camp. Hard work, but you get so much out of it.
Hmm.
This article, it mentions how they give the K1000 to students a lot. Makes sense now. Before we move on from these SLRs, gotta ask lenses. Huge part of using these cameras, right?
Absolutely. When you get an SLR, you're not just picking a camera, you're buying into this whole system of lenses.
Yeah.
And they each have their own, feel, their own strengths. So the Nikon F3, right, it has this lens mount, the Nikon F mount, and it's famous. It means you can use tons of different lenses with it. Some of them are really old too.
Oh, wow. So many choices. Kind of intimidating, but in a good way. Yeah. What about those other SLRs we talked about? The Canon AE-1 and the Pentax K1000. What kind of lenses can you use with those?
Yeah, so the Canon AE-1 uses the Canon FD mount. Plenty of lenses for that one too, and you can usually find them for a good price, less than some of those Nikon lenses for sure. And then the Pentax K1000, that uses the Pentax K mount, might take a little more digging to find certain lenses for that one, but there's still a bunch out there, especially if you like those old vintage lenses.
Good to know. Good to know. So no matter which SLR someone picks up, they're not going to be stuck with just one lens. Cool. Okay, but let's move on a bit. Time to get beyond the SLRs. Our deep dive is headed into compact camera territory. And this article kicks it off with one that's got a, quote, cult following, the Contax T2. Seems like it's the camera for street photography. Even celebrities have been seen with it. What's so special about this one?
The Contax T2, huh? It's kind of like if those big SLRs we were just talking about had a smaller, way more stylish cousin, you know? Like, it's known for how cool it looks, definitely. But it's not just a pretty face. The image quality is seriously impressive for such a small camera. A lot of that is thanks to the lens it uses. It's a Carl Zeiss lens.
Carl Zeiss. Okay, that sounds familiar, but help me out here. Why are those lenses such a big deal?
Ah, yeah. Carl Zeiss, they're like legendary when it comes to making lenses. They've been doing it for like over 100 years. And when you see that name, you know it's going to be sharp, super clear, and just make your photos look amazing. Like they can take a good photo and make it like next level.
So the Contax T2, it's like the best of both worlds then. You get that easy point-and-shoot style, but with like professional level quality. This article also mentioned something about it being like collectible now. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's true. The Contax T2, it's gotten super popular lately, and that's always going to drive the price up. You know how it is. Part of it is that whole vintage thing that's in style. But honestly, it's just a really great camera, period. Small, looks cool, takes amazing photos. It's the kind of camera you actually want to carry around with you everywhere, and people notice it too.
A true classic. Okay, so we're going from the sleek, cool Contax T2 to something totally different. The Olympus OM-1. This article, it says this camera has, quote, mechanical charm. What's that all about?
Haha, yeah. Okay, so if the Contax T2 is like a, I don't know, a tailored suit or something, the Olympus OM-1 is a pair of hiking boots. Tough, reliable. It's all about the mechanics, the simple design. This camera came out in '72, and it was a big deal because of how small it was. Tiny, especially for an SLR back then, and built to last. Plus, you don't even need batteries for it. Well, okay, you do if you want to use the light meter, but the fact that it can work without them at all, that just shows you how well made it is.
No batteries needed.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's wild. I bet, like, photographers who are always on adventures, going to crazy places, I bet they love that. What about people who like to be more, incognito when they're taking pictures?
The Olympus OM-1, it's really quiet for an SLR, especially compared to some others that are like super loud. So that, plus how small it is, makes it perfect for street photography. You can blend in, catch those moments, and people might not even realize you're taking their picture.
Like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Looks all innocent, but it's got it where it counts.
Huh. Yeah, exactly. Oh, and we can't forget about those Olympus lenses, the Zuiko lenses. They're known for being really, really sharp. Olympus really knew what they were doing with those.
It's kind of mind-blowing, right? That something made so long ago can still hang with modern cameras. Speaking of timeless, our next camera is often called, like, in a league of its own, the Leica M6. I can already tell this one's got some stories.
The Leica M6, it's not even just a camera, it's like an icon, It's what happens when you take the best craftsmanship, the best engineering, that whole Leica mystique, and put it into a camera. Just imagine holding the weight of it, how the metal feels, that quiet shutter. It's an experience.
Yeah, it sounds like the kind of camera you aspire to own someday.
Totally. And there's a reason people love it so much, Part of it is the history. The Leica M6 and like the whole M series, those cameras were used by like the greats. Famous photographers, photojournalists capturing these iconic moments, street photographers just like documenting life, even like artists who use it as, I don't know, a way to express themselves.
So it's a piece of history, not just a camera. This article, it calls it the, quote, creme de la creme of rangefinder cameras. Okay, first of all, what makes it so special? And what even is a rangefinder?
Right. So rangefinders, they're different from SLRs. You don't look directly through the lens when you're composing your shot. It takes some getting used to, for sure. But people who love rangefinders, they love them because they're discreet, And you can be really, really precise with your focusing.
It's like a whole different way of thinking about photography, a different way of seeing.
That's it, exactly. And the Leica M6, with the rangefinder mechanism it's got, those legendary lenses, how well built the whole thing is, it's considered one of the absolute best rangefinders ever. It's expensive, for sure. No way around that. But it's the kind of camera that can make your photography better. And it might just, like, spark something in you, A lifelong passion.
Yeah, I get it. It's like listening to your favorite music on Spotify versus listening to it on, like, a vintage record player.
Yeah.
Both give you the music, but the experience, it's just different.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. It's about appreciating the little things, the way it's made, the history behind it.
For sure. Okay, last camera we're going to talk about today. Got to switch it up completely. The Polaroid SX-70. No waiting around for this one. Instant results. What's the deal with this iconic camera?
Oh, man. The Polaroid SX-70, it's straight up magic. This camera first came out in the early 70s, and it changed everything for instant photography. It was the very first instant SLR. So you look through the lens, just like those other SLRs, but then bam, you get the picture right away. And watching it develop, nothing else like it.
Like you're holding a memory right there in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. It's different, you know? It's not about planning every little detail. It's about going with the flow, catching those moments that just happen, those cool, unexpected shots.
And you got to love the way those Polaroid pictures look. That kind of faded color, that soft focus, the square shape. You know it's Polaroid right away.
Totally. Polaroid photos just like have something about them. They feel more personal, you know, real in a way that digital photos sometimes don't.
Well, we covered a lot of cameras today, from the Nikon F3, the workhorse, to the Polaroid SX-70 Instant Magic. What are your final thoughts on all this? What would you say to someone who's listening and thinking, man, I want to try film photography?
All these cameras we talked about, they're each their own way of approaching photography. The F3, that's about precision. Canon AE-1, good place to start if you're new to this.
Huh.
The K1000, that's for slowing down, learning the ropes. The Contax T2, your stylish little buddy. Olympus OM-1, small but mighty. Leica M6, legendary. And the Polaroid, that's pure, joyful, instant photography.
So many choices. It's really about finding the camera that, I don't know, that clicks with you,
Yes.
fits your style, gets those creative juices flowing.
You got it. My best advice, don't overthink it. Just go for it. Try different cameras, different film, experiment. That's the beauty of film photography. It's all about discovery. You never know what you're going to get.
Beautifully said. It's about slowing down, appreciating how it all works, getting back to that feeling of making something real. Okay, listener, what camera's calling your name? Let us know. Until next time, happy shooting.